Imagine a city. Not a human city of steel and concrete, but a living, breathing, vertical metropolis constructed entirely of organic material, a city that scales impossible heights, operates on multiple stratified levels, and harbors a population so diverse that 99% of its citizens have never even been cataloged by our census. This is the architectural marvel of the tropical rainforest, a structure built on a foundation of astonishing poverty. The soil, contrary to the lush imagery above, is often deeply infertile, a thin, red, clay-like layer depleted of nutrients by constant heat and rain. The entire towering edifice is not rooted in richness but in ruthless, instantaneous recycling. This is the first core data point. The biomass, the living material, is not in the ground. It is held aloft in the bodies of the plants and animals themselves. When a leaf falls, a branch breaks, or a creature dies, it does not slowly decompose into rich humus. It is set upon by a hyper-efficient cleanup crew of decomposers, fungi, termites, bacteria so specialized and voracious that nutrients are stripped and pulled back up into the living system within a matter of weeks, sometimes days. The root systems of the giant trees are shockingly shallow, spreading wide like a pancake just beneath the surface to capture this fleeting nutrient pulse. They are buttressed by great woody flanges not for depth, but for stability against the wind in this thin, competitive topsoil. This creates a profound paradox. The most biodiverse and productive ecosystem on land exists on a foundation that is essentially a biological desert, sustained only by the breathtaking speed of its own internal loop. This loop is powered by the relentless engine of the equatorial sun and the daily deluge of rain. The water cycle here is a closed, intense system. The trees themselves are the rainmakers. Through transpiration, a single large tree can release hundreds of gallons of water vapor into the atmosphere daily. Entire forest creates its own weather, seeding clouds that then return the water as rain in a perpetual, self-watering cycle. This transpiration pump is so powerful that it influences continental weather patterns. The rivers in the sky, atmospheric flows of moisture, originate here and carry precipitation far inland. The data is stark. Deforestation in the Amazon doesn't just remove trees, it breaks the pump. Studies show reduced rainfall thousands of miles away in agricultural hotlands, directly linking the fate of the rainforest to the breadbaskets of continents. Now, let's ascend into the structure of this city. The forest floor, despite the cinematic expectation, is not a tangled, impenetrable thicket. It is a dim, open space, a cathedral of trunks, where only 2% of the available sunlight penetrates. Life here is adapted to gloom and rapid decay. The true action, the economic heart of the metropolis, is in the canopy, a layer 100 to 150 feet above ground, so dense it forms a continuous green carpet, a realm scientists call the last biotic frontier. This is where 90% of the rainforest life exists. It is a world of extreme specialization and evolutionary arms race played out on a vertical scale. Lianas, thick woody vines, use the trees as scaffolding to reach the light, creating aerial highways for animals. Epiphytes, orchids, bromeliads, ferns grow, not as parasites but as air plants, collecting water and nutrients, their own miniature ecosystems, held in the crook of a branch. A single tree can host over 50 different epiphyte species, each a microhabitat for insects, frogs, and even small mammals. The competition for light has driven staggering adaptations. Trees grow with astonishing speed, racing for a gap in the canopy. Some, like the strangler fig, begin life as a seed deposited by a bird high in a branch. It grows downward, sending roots to the ground that eventually envelop and strangle the host tree, becoming a hollow, independent trunk. This is not malice, but strategy. Leaves themselves are engineered with drip tips, pointed ends that shed water efficiently to prevent fungal and algal growth in the constant humidity. Every surface, every niche, every moment of the day and night is occupied by a life form with a precise role, a cog in this immense silent machine that operates on the fundamental principles of capture, compete, recycle, and survive. The efficiency is humbling. Nothing is wasted. A fruit eaten becomes seed dispersal. A gap created by a fallen giant becomes a sunlit opportunity for 1,000 saplings. The death of one organism is the immediate sustenance for millions of others. This is the baseline operation of the system, a system we are now disrupting not with a scalpel, but with a blunt, fiery axe. To truly grasp the scale of what is being lost, we must move from architecture to library, from structure to information. A rainforest is not just a collection of species. It is the planet's most vast, dynamic, and ancient repository of genetic code and chemical innovation. The biodiversity statistic. You often hear that rainforests contain over half of the world's terrestrial species is not an exaggeration. It is likely an underestimation. The numbers are so staggering they defy everyday comprehension. In 10 square kilometers of Bornean rainforest, you can find more tree species than in all of North America. In a single hectare of Peruvian Amazon, scientists have counted over 300 species of trees. The insect life is orders of magnitude more diverse. One study in Panama found over 25,000 species of beetles in a single 6,000-hectare area. This hyperdiversity, known as the latitudinal diversity gradient, with life forms increasing exponentially towards the tropics, is one of biology's great puzzles, but its outcome is a treasure trove of biological data that has been written over millions of years of uninterrupted evolution. This genetic library is the original source code for our planet's biosphere. But why does this matter to you, sitting in your home? Because this library is also our planet's foremost pharmaceutical research and development lab, and we have only just begun to read its table of contents. Less than 1% of rainforest plant and insect species have been thoroughly studied for their chemical and medicinal potential. Yet, from that tiny fraction, we have derived world-changing compounds. The treatment for childhood leukemia, vincristine, and vinblastine came from the rosy periwinkle, a plant from the rainforests of Madagascar. The muscle relaxant used in major surgery, tubercular, originated from the poisonous curare vine used by indigenous hunters. The blueprint for synthetic opioids, the basis for drugs like morphine, comes from the opium poppy, a plant whose relatives and potential analogs are hidden in unexplored forest chemistry. Every time a hectare of primary forest is cleared and burned, we are not just burning trees, we are burning thousands of unique, evolved genetic manuscripts, each containing molecular formulas for compounds that could cure diseases, create new materials, or solve agricultural problems. This is not a sentimental loss. It is an active, ongoing destruction of potential human knowledge and technological advancement on a scale we cannot even quantify. The economic logic is insane. We are trading millennia of evolved R&D for a few years of beef pasture or soy monoculture. The information stored here extends beyond medicine into sheer survival intelligence. The forest itself is a massive carbon sequestration and storage facility. The data is unequivocal. The world's tropical rainforests store over 250 billion metric tons of carbon in their biomass and soils. To put that in perspective, that's about 90 years' worth of current global fossil fuel emissions locked away in living tissue. The Amazon alone holds the equivalent of 10 years of global emissions. When the forest is intact, it acts as a carbon sink, absorbing roughly 2 billion tons of CO2 annually. But when it is degraded or burned, it becomes a colossal carbon source, releasing centuries of stored carbon back into the atmosphere in a matter of weeks. The math is terrifyingly simple. We cannot meet any international climate target, not 1.5 degrees Celsius, not 2 degrees Celsius, without preserving and restoring tropical rainforests. They are not a side issue in the climate crisis. They are a central, non-negotiable pillar of any solution. The forest cooling effect is also physical, not just chemical. The vast green canopy has a low albedo, meaning it absorbs heat, but this is more than offset by the cooling from transpiration, the process of releasing water vapor. It functions as a giant living air conditioner. Deforestation replaces this complex, moist, cooling engine with dry, dark, heat-absorbing pasture or cropland, creating local heat islands and altering regional climate patterns. The information in the forest is also cultural. It is the home, the pharmacy, the cosmology, and the supermarket for millions of indigenous people who possess detailed, generational knowledge of its intricacies, knowledge that is itself an irreplaceable data set for sustainable living and biodiversity management. This library of life, climate regulation, and human wisdom is on fire, and we are debating the cost of the fire extinguisher. So what is setting this library ablaze? The drivers are not mysterious or natural. They are a direct, traceable consequence of global economic demand, local politics, and perverse incentives. We must move past the vague notion of deforestation and into the specific mechanized processes that are dismantling the ecosystem piece by piece. The primary driver, accounting for over 80% of deforestation in the Amazon, is agribusiness. This is not subsistence farming by poor locals. This is large-scale industrial conversion for commodity exports. The pattern, often called the arc of deforestation, follows a brutal, predictable sequence. It begins with illegal or legally dubious logging for high-value timber, like mahogany and teak. Roads are punched deep into pristine forest to extract these trees. These roads are the infection vectors. They open access for land speculators, ranchers, and farmers. The cleared land is then burned, the iconic slash and burn, seen from space or rapid, cheap method to clear biomass, and add a temporary nutrient pulse from the ash to the poor soil. Cattle are brought in. Beef ranching is the leading cause of deforestation globally. The data from organizations like Global Forest Watch is precise. Millions of hectares are lost annually to create pasture, much of it to supply a growing global demand for beef, with China, the United States, and the European Union being major importers of either the beef itself or the soy used to feed cattle elsewhere. Soy cultivation is the second major agricultural driver, a vast monoculture that follows cattle pasture as soil fertility from the initial burn declines. This soy is overwhelmingly not for tofu or human consumption. It is for animal feed, fueling factory farms across the world. The supply chain is clear. The burger on a plate in a distant city can be directly linked to a recently cleared, smoldering patch of what was once primary rainforest. Beyond agriculture, mining is a devastating, localized force. Gold mining, in particular, uses mercury to separate gold from sediment, poisoning rivers and entering the food chain, affecting indigenous communities hundreds of miles downstream. Vast craters pockmark the forest landscape, and the infrastructure, airstrips, camps, more roads enables further encroachment. Hydropower dams, often touted as green energy, flood enormous tracts of forest, displacing communities and releasing massive amounts of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, from decaying submerged vegetation. The political and economic frameworks enable this. Weak governance, corruption, lack of law enforcement in remote areas, and land tenure conflicts all create a climate of impunity. Land grabbing, where public forest is illegally claimed, cleared, and then used to establish de facto ownership for speculation or amnesty programs, is rampant. The economic model views the forest as unproductive land. Its immense but diffuse ecosystem services carbon storage, water cycling, climate regulation having no immediate market value compared to the tangible profit from beef or soy. This is the fundamental failure of our global economic system. It does not account for the trillion-dollar value of a standing forest. International trade deals and consumption patterns in developed economies directly fuel this engine of destruction. It is a system of remote control, whether decision in a corporate boardroom or a consumer supermarket aisle pulls a trigger thousands of miles away in the heart of the forest. The consequences are not distant or future tense. They are occurring in real time. We are witnessing a biome tipping point. Scientists warn that the Amazon, due to deforestation and climate change-induced drought, is losing its resilience. The fear is it could reach a point where it can no longer generate enough rain to sustain itself, triggering a catastrophic dieback, transforming from a lush rainforest into a drier, savanna-like ecosystem. This is not science fiction. Models suggest we could be approaching a threshold where 20 to 25% of the Amazon is deforested. We're currently at around 17%. This transition would release billions of tons of carbon, destabilize global weather patterns, and extinguish countless species in a planetary scale cascade failure. The fire is not metaphorical, it is literal, visible from satellites, and its smoke sometimes darkens the skies of cities thousands of miles away. The drivers are known, the supply chains are mapped, and the point of no return is being quantified. The question is no longer what is happening, but what are we, as a connected global audience, going to do about it? Confronted with this staggering complexity and scale, it's easy to feel helpless, to view the loss as inevitable, a tragic but distant event on a news scroll. That feeling is the enemy of action. The critical transition we must make is from passive awareness to empowered understanding that solutions exist. They are multifaceted, and they operate at every level, from the global political stage to your own daily choices. The first and most non-negotiable solution is the protection of indigenous territories. The data here is some of the most compelling and hopeful in all of environmental science. Numerous studies, including those from the World Resources Institute, have shown that forests under the stewardship of indigenous peoples who hold legal land rights have deforestation rates significantly lower, often half or less than even officially protected government parks. Indigenous communities are not just inhabitants, they are the forest's most effective and knowledgeable guardians. Their cultures, cosmologies, and survival are intrinsically tied to the forest's health. They manage it for long-term sustainability using sophisticated agroforestry techniques, rotational hunting, and deep ecological knowledge accumulated over millennia. Securing their land tenure is not a charitable act. It is the single most cost-effective and ecologically sound strategy for forest conservation on the planet. Supporting organizations that fund indigenous land rights and legal defense is a direct action with measurable impact. The second pillar is transforming the economic model. This means creating real, tangible financial value for a standing forest. Carbon credit markets, despite their controversies and need for robust oversight to prevent fraud, represent a fundamental shift. They attempt to put a price on the ecosystem service of carbon storage. The concept of REDD+, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, is a framework where developed nations or corporations pay forested nations to keep their forests intact. When properly managed with strict social and environmental safeguards and with the full involvement of local communities, this can align economic incentives with conservation. Beyond carbon, there is growing momentum for bioeconomies or forest economies that generate income from non-timber forest products, sustainably harvested fruits, nuts, oils, and resins, and from ecosystem services like water provision. This moves the economic paradigm from cut it down for a one-time profit to keep it standing for perpetual income. Technology is a powerful ally. Satellite monitoring from platforms like Global Forest Watch provides near real-time, high-resolution data on forest loss, enabling faster response to illegal activity and holding governments and corporations accountable. Blockchain technology is being explored to create transparent, tamper-proof supply chains, allowing consumers to verify that the products they buy are not linked to deforestation. Genetic sequencing and drone-based reseeding projects offer tools for large-scale restoration of degraded lands. On the corporate and policy level, binding commitments matter. The European Union's recent regulation banning imports of commodities linked to deforestation is a landmark policy that, if rigorously enforced, can reshape global markets. Consumer pressure has led hundreds of major corporations to sign pledges like the New York Declaration on Forests, committing to eliminate deforestation from their supply chains. While enforcement and transparency remain challenges, these frameworks create legal and reputational risks for bad actors. But what does this mean for you, the individual viewer? Your power is in your role as a consumer and a citizen. As a consumer, you have purchasing influence. Reducing your consumption of industrially produced red meat, particularly beef, directly reduces demand for the leading driver of deforestation. Seeking out products with credible, third-party certifications like Rainforest Alliance or FSC, Forest Stewardship Council, for wood and paper, while not perfect, supports better practices. Being aware of hidden deforestation in products containing palm oil, soy, leather, and cocoa, and choosing brands committed to transparent, deforestation-free supply chains sends market signals. More importantly, your power as a citizen is greater. Vote for politicians who prioritize climate action and support strong international agreements and foreign aid directed towards forest conservation and indigenous rights. Support through donations or awareness the NGOs and the front lines groups like the Rainforest Foundation, the Environmental Defense Fund, or the Amazon Conservation Team that work directly with indigenous communities and use science and law for protection. Use your voice on social media to amplify these issues and hold corporations accountable. The narrative must shift from one of doom and hopelessness to one of agency and interconnected solutions. The rainforest is not a separate, exotic place. It is a functional organ in the planetary body. Its health is directly tied to our economic stability, our food security, our climate, and our future. Protecting it is not an environmental niche issue. It is an act of global systems maintenance, a strategic investment in planetary resilience. We have the knowledge, we are developing the tools, and we are beginning to align the economics. The missing ingredient always is the sustained, informed, and vocal will of the global public that means you. As we conclude this deep dive, let's crystallize the narrative. We began not with a peaceful postcard, but with a shocking truth. The rainforest is a biological supercomputer operating on principles of extreme efficiency and ancient wisdom, a system far more integral to your daily life than the air you breathe and the climate you experience. We explored it. Architectural genius, built on a paradox of poverty and abundance, a vertical city where life races for light. In a perfectly tuned recycling loop, we entered its vast library, the planet's greatest repository of genetic code and chemical innovation, a pharmaceutical and climate-regulating treasure we are burning before we've even read the titles of most of its books. We dissected the brutal economic engines driving this destruction, the roads, the fires, the cattle, and the soy, tracing a direct line from global consumption to local annihilation, and we confronted the terrifying mathematical reality of a biome tipping point that would redefine life on Earth. Finally, we armed ourselves with the arsenal of solutions, from the irreplaceable guardianship of indigenous peoples to the transformative power of economic valuation, technology, policy, and most critically, our own informed choices as consumers and citizens. This journey was designed to replace vague concern with specific, actionable knowledge. The mist in that shaft of light is now clear. It is the visible moisture of a transpiration pump that waters continents. The light itself is the energy source for the entire planetary scale operation. And the shadows are the growing voids we are creating through ignorance and inaction. This is not a nature documentary. This is a systems briefing. Your understanding is no longer passive. You now hold a map of the problem and a toolkit for engagement. So here is your final non-negotiable call to action. A sequence of deliberate steps you will take in the next 10 minutes. First, solidify your commitment to being part of the informed. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel is dedicated to this level of deep dive, data-driven analysis on the systems that shape our world. By subscribing, you are not just supporting this work. You are building your own intellectual arsenal to understand and engage with complexity. Second, make this knowledge active. In the comments below, I want you to type one specific action you will take this week. It could be, I will research and switch to a deforestation-free coffee brand. I will write to my representative about supporting the Forest Act. I will reduce my beef consumption by 1 meal a week and document it. Or I will donate to reputable indigenous land rights organization. This public commitment creates accountability and builds a community of action right here. I will be reading and engaging with your comments. Third, share this video, not just a like, a share. Send it to one person you think needs to see this. Share it on your social media with a sentence about what struck you most. Break the algorithm bubble of passive content and inject this detailed analysis into the conversation. Your share is a direct act of education and amplification. Fourth, go beyond this video. Use the knowledge as a springboard. The links in the description are a curated starting point reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, on forests, databases from Global Forest Watch, links to credible conservation organizations working on the ground. Your journey does not end when this video ends, it begins. The rainforest is not a faraway place. It is a global commons, a critical infrastructure for life on Earth. Its fate is being decided in boardrooms, in supermarkets, in voting booths, and in the collective consciousness of people like you who choose to pay attention. You now have the data. You now see the shafts of light and the shadows for what they truly are. The final paragraph of this story has not been written. It will be written by the sum of our actions. The question posed at the very beginning, what if the most critical ecosystem is this one, now has an answer. It is. And you are now a conscious part of its narrative. Do not let this end with a fading screen. Hit subscribe, comment your action, share this video, and let's prove that informed, collective action is the most powerful force on the planet. The forest is waiting.